Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of Psalms by others. These are psalms who are written by named composers who are not David, nor are neither David nor Asaph. And we've looked at Solomon, and we've looked at Moses, and now we're going to look at the sons of Korah. The sons of Korah are responsible for 11 psalms and some of the best known psalms. Our God is a present help in time of trouble. The psalm that contains the line, "Be still and know that I am God." That's their psalm, Psalm 46. As the deer pants for water, so my soul longs after you. That's Psalm 42. That's a psalm from the sons of Korah. Um, we don't have individual names to these songs, except one has a name attached to it, along with the sons of Korah. Uh, and so these songs were written by multiple men, so far as we know. But there's a consistent, identifiable voice. There's a sound, um, and what I can compare it to is Johann Sebastian Bach had so many sons who composed and who were famous composers in their own right. Wilhelm Friedrich, Carl Philipp Emanuel, Johann Christian, um, and you can always tell that they're not Bach, but they sound a lot like their dad. And so you can hear one of the sons of Bach, and you can think, well, which one was this? But because you know it's one of his sons, there's this consistent sound. And that's true about the sons of Korah as well. I think we're going to notice that. We'll talk a little bit more about their style in a minute. But first, we need to tell you who they are because their forefather is quite a famous rebel in Scripture, mentioned in the Old Testament and the New. He's mentioned specifically in Jude, verse 11. We just got through studying Jude. Korah is the first cousin of Moses and Aaron. And Korah, during the wilderness wanderings, and this is reported in Numbers chapter 16. The whole chapter really deals with the rebellion of Korah and its aftermath. Korah, who is himself a leader, not only serving in the tabernacle, but a leader of men who have been chosen by the assembly, as it says in Numbers 20 or number 16, um, to represent the group, and he leads 250 of these men. How many does that represent among all the men who would be considered clan leaders, officials that would represent? I'm not sure, but a sizable number. The people wandering through the wilderness numbered in the hundreds of thousands, and so I'm sure that represented a good number. And they basically say, they come to Moses and Aaron and basically say, "You guys have led the people long enough. It's time for us to lead now." And Moses' reaction to this is to fall on his face in a humble position. And then he tells Korah and the rebels, tomorrow bring incense to burn to the Lord, and we'll let the Lord choose who he wants to lead this nation. And when he talks to some of the leaders, other leaders, Dathan and Abiram, whom he thinks he can have a conversation with, they tell him why. And they're basically rebelling against God's decision that the children of Israel, that generation would die in the wilderness. Um, they say, "Is it not enough that you have brought us up out of a land flowing with milk and honey to have us die in this wilderness? But you would also lord it over us? You have not brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, nor have you given us an inheritance of fields and vineyards. Would you put out the eyes of these men? We will not come up." He says, we can see, all of us can see that the promise of the land of milk and honey is not going to happen for us. And they were right. It wasn't going to happen for them, but that's God's judgment. And of course, the story is much longer. What ends up happening is that when Korah and the people who are rebelling with him, the leaders, when they make their case, verse 31 of number 16, the ground opens up under them, it split open. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up and their households and the men who belonged to Korah with their possessions, so that they belonged to them and went down alive to Sheol, and the earth closed over them, and they perished from the midst of the assembly. And all Israel who were around them fled at their outcry, for they said, the earth may swallow us up. Fire also came forth from the Lord and consumed the 250 men who were offering the incense. So we have this decisive judgment, fire from heaven coming down, consuming the men among them who were burning the incense. But then we have the Korah and the leaders that followed him and and the family members that stood with them. We have the earth open up, and then there's this phrase which is so amazing. They went down alive to Sheol. That could mean that they were swallowed up alive and were buried alive and died in the earth. You know, that the Sheol could mean the grave, or Sheol could mean hell itself. That that in the same way that Elijah, went to heaven in the whirlwind with the fiery chariots, or that Enoch was translated from one plane of existence to another. Maybe that happened to Korah and the people who were following him. It's just scary, and it was meant to be scary. This is not rebellion against Moses. This is rebellion against God. Now, we're told right there in the book of Numbers, in Numbers chapter 26, verse 10, that Korah's own sons did not rebel with him, and that they survived, and that they were not in any way punished for Korah's own sins, and they continued to serve. We know from First Chronicles chapter 9, verses 19 through 21, and chapter 6, beginning with verse 1, what their job was. The sons of Korah were the gatekeepers of the tabernacle. That's what they did. They managed the door, the coming in, the going out. That was their Levitical duty. Don't forget that Moses is a Levite, and so he is of the priestly family, and those with whom he is related are serving in priestly roles. So this is their priestly role. They are but they also are the singers. They are the core of the male singers in the tabernacle service. That's what they do. That's their job, their Levitical job. Now, I want to just, before we close, and I know we're coming on 8 minutes, when we read these Psalms, and we'll start with 42 next week, um, we are going to, it's going to be clear to us that these men have been influenced by singing the Psalms of David, because they borrow his language, they borrow his imagery, they borrow even some of his uh, uh, um, phrases outright. But that shouldn't surprise us. If Bach's sons sound like Bach, that shouldn't surprise us. If the singers who came after David are going to sound like David, that should not surprise us at all. But they do have their own distinct voice. One of the things that we're going to notice, and we'll notice some others as we study these psalms, is that they fill their psalms with the imagery of nature and the pastoral image of the farm. And so, they just see the natural world around them, and the blessings, the pastoral blessings that this agricultural people enjoys whenever they are right with the Lord. And they use those images to communicate the goodness that we have with God, and also to communicate the power that he has over the world that we live in. And so you're going to see a lot of nature images and pastoral images in their psalms. Okay. We'll pick up with Psalm 42 next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes.